Hello, my dears, and welcome to this episode of Moms Who Poll. My name is Andrea, and I am your most average mom who polls. This is part two of my episode with the beautiful and talented Allie Rachel Poll. There is so much more fun stuff to talk about, including some of the amazing things that she has done in the past year and continues to do in the UK. So let's listen in. So let me ask you, because I see you as a very flowy pole dancer. I happen to be, I will admit, I gotta say it. Hello, my name is Andrea. I am a sexy pole dancer.
I love it.
Would you describe your style as a smidge sexy?
A smidge for sure. And I feel like a smidge is actually kind of the right amount to describe my style because I love the sexy side. Absolutely. I get so much fulfillment from that side. And I think there's something very healing in that for women in general. And that's one of the biggest reasons I love pole. And I think, especially for those of us with sexual trauma and things like that, to be able to be sexy in a safe space that's women led and supportive and you're not worried about the male gaze and all these different things. I think for me, that's extremely healing and freeing. Because I have definitely a sexy side and I need to tap into it. And for me, this is a safe way to do it. But on that same note, I feel like I still have probably some like self judgment and shame and things like growing up, in the years that we did. We're a similar age, I think, mid 30s. And it was a slightly different time, I think, than, people who are in their 20s now. When we grew up in our teens, there's a lot of shame around being sexy and all this stuff. And so I definitely internalized a lot of that. And so I think I still have, I'm always sort of at war with myself, like, how sexy can I be? How sexy can my post be? Is it too sexy? Like, or whatever. And I try to just get rid of that and just post it anyway. But yeah, I think I'm a smidge sexy and a lot flowy in my style.
I I have that same internal struggle.
Mm-hmm.
It took me a while to break it, and I was definitely a silly, sexy pole dancer for a long time.
Right, right.
And coming to that acceptance of, yeah, I'm sexy and I'm not going to censor that. There's a couple times where I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, that video is a little too crotchy for my liking. Maybe a minute, but I really admire the pole dancers who they are sexy dancers and they're
Fully, yes,
crotchy. Yeah. And,
absolutely.
and
I follow all of them.
yeah,
And I'm like, wow, look at her. She's amazing.
right.
I can only hope to emulate. Yeah.
I think that same embracing that sexy side, and right now embodiment is like the trendy word that we're all striving for and that we're looking for. I love all of that. I also think that is what can be incredibly intimidating to someone off the
Mm,
street that,
totally.
wants to do
Totally.
all. It's why they should do it. It would be great,
Mm-hmm.
like break out of your shell. It's okay. But I think sometimes it's like it can end up being an internal struggle for someone who's deciding, like, do I enter the whorish
Mm-hmm.
place of a pole dance studio?
Yes.
Yes.
What does it say about me when I enter? Yeah. Yeah. No, I absolutely agree with that. And I think the sexy side can be both enticing and intimidating. And I think that's what makes pole so interesting, actually, and what makes it a niche thing that will probably never be fully mainstream. Um, but which I kind of like, actually. I mean, there's good and bad about that. But yeah, I find that I'm in a place now where I'm teaching in a community where pole is pretty new and not well established. And so I find that with my students here, the sexy side is the most intimidating side for them, and they're not quite ready. And that's the part that I have to kind of like almost sneak in a little bit, when I'm teaching, like, first I'll teach them a step around and then I'm like, okay, now we're gonna get a little sexy. We're gonna do a body roll, and yeah, things like that. So you have to slip it in and I think really encourage them to feel okay and not be self-judging or, any of that, which of course they will be, but just make it okay for them. And I remember feeling that way too. And it's like you're so excited because you really want to do that. And oh my God, I'm being allowed to show that side of myself, because as women in Western culture, we're so not allowed to show that side of ourselves most of the time. And you're finally being told, yes, not only should you, but do it more extra, like, stick your butt out more. And I think that, yeah, I think that's really freeing for people once they're sort of in the starting to feel more comfortable, but it takes time. And I have a lot of students who are they're not there yet, but like I'm sprinkling it in all the time and I'm like, come on, like come to choreo, we're going to do more of this. And yeah, I think that is such an interesting side of pole, and there's so much psychology in that. And I feel like you could unpack that for, years probably and study that.
I think that's why other women who I've had on, this podcast. Come on, Andrea, call it a podcast. Again, got to get comfortable with that.
That's what it is.
Yeah. The other guests that I've talked to, they have spoken a lot about how pole has helped them reclaim their sensuality, be comfortable in their bodies, and that sexy side. We look at it like, oh, it's sexy, and that's why people have trouble with it. And I'm like, well, maybe it's also tapping into your body in a truly authentic way, free from, like you said, another person's gaze, the male gaze. I think that's part of the taboo of it. And then you combine it with it's stripper roots, and then it's like, okay, like
right.
Game on, right?
Yes. Strippers who we love, our founding foremothers.
Our founding foremothers, yes. So I think that's a big part of it. And I think it's interesting that coming to a place where pole is new, so you're introducing pole, the sport, the athletic side, and don't forget sexy roots. Let's do some body waves. In case people don't know, because I think we touched on this just a little bit earlier, but you moved across continents, right?
Yes, 7,000 miles, I think, to be exact.
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm from California, born and raised, and lived a while in Boston, came back to California, was in San Diego where we met. And then my husband is from the UK. And so I moved to England last year, about 10 months ago, I think, to Suffolk, which is a semi-rural part of England that's about 2 hours northeast of London. And it's beautiful and I love it. And it's, we have a lot of family here, and it's been really, really fascinating and fun. And I'm trying to build a pole business here. Like I have a pole business here. I'm teaching out of my house right now. And have a little studio called Spin and Flow Pole Studio. And so I'm building up my clientele, and I have students coming every week. And then I'm looking for a space to open a proper studio in Ipswich. So yeah, so it's new-ish to here, because the closest pole studios are about 45 minutes to an hour away from where I live. And even at that, it's definitely newer here. This is not London where I'm living, which is really big in London. London has like 10 studios and it's a great pole scene, but where I live is not the same as that.
I'm actually flying through London in April. I'm heading to a camp in Austria, and I figured if I'm going all the way across the pond, I'm going to stop in London, and I'm going to stay with Kat for a few days. She's out by Bristol.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
And Kat's daughter and my daughter are best friends. And my daughter started, I mean, she didn't full on cry. It was just the look of just utter sadness that I was going to see her best friend. Without her.
Oh,
and
poor
then,
baby.
And then Kat said, well, we're happy to host Vera while you go on to your pole camp. So yeah, so
that's great.
Now she's going.
I mean, great for you and great for her. That'll be really nice.
But so she's coming with me, and by that time I had already bought my pole ticket. or my plane ticket to go pole dancing.
Yeah.
So I had already bought my plane ticket, and I had waited. I had been like doing all the research, see what was a good price. And I got a really good price on British Airways.
Mm-hmm.
And then like 5 days after like this whole conversation occurred, my husband was like, yeah, we should let Vera go. And I'm like, I
Already got my
already,
ticket.
yeah. And you can't book a flight for a minor like alone traveling overseas because,
Right. No, you
sex
can't.
trafficking is kind of a thing. Yeah. So I had to call
Well, I think they don't even let you. I don't know with Vera because she's older, but with my kids, you had to have an adult, but they were under 5. So
yeah, if they're I think if they're under 5, they have to have an adult. If they're under, I think it's 14, there has to be like some sort of waiver that's signed, and so
okay.
you can't book it online. If they're over 16, that's different. But
Right.
for her, I had to call British Airways. I had to explain the whole thing, and her ticket was, and she wasn't even going on to Austria like I was. So her ticket just to London and back was $300 more than mine was. And then,
Of course,
for the privilege of guaranteeing that she could sit next to me on the plane, that was like another $200 to make sure.
oh
that
my
we
God. Of course. Of course. Yeah, like 100 each way. Oh God.
And then she said to me, she's like, well, I'm really, I'm really worried. My friends are really jealous that I get to go to London. I'm like, no. Let's be clear. You're not going to London. You're going to England. You're going to Bristol. It's very different.
Bristol's nice though.
It
Yeah,
is.
so that's good. It's a good
It's
place to
nice.
go.
But I think when, like in America, you think of England, it's like synonymous with London. And so I tried to explain to them,
Yes.
like, it's like how people, if someone said New York City when they're going to somewhere in America,
It's so everyone thinks of California, they just think of LA. It's that.
yeah, exactly. So, but I guess her friends are making her feel really bad about getting to go to England, to the point where saying she shouldn't go. And I said, oh, let me be clear. I paid an extra $500 for your ticket compared to mine, and it
Yes.
is non-refundable. So you
You're
don't have a
going.
choice. Yeah, you're going whether you
No,
like
she'll
it or
have such a
not.
great experience. It'll be so good for her.
I'm really excited. I think it'll break her out of her shell. And Kat, if you're listening, feed her lots of vegetables. Maybe she will learn to like them.
She'll probably eat them with someone else.
I hope so. There were a couple times she would be at Kat's house, and Kat's a great cook. She cooks a lot of really great like vegetarian meals, and Gunnar would eat her vegetarian meals and like love them. Such a good eater. Vera would sit there and wait for me to come and pick her up. And when I would come to pick her up, she'd say, I'm hungry. Let's go home.
Oh. How old is she now?
She's 10.
Wow.
I know.
My gosh. You're entering a whole other world of motherhood. I have no idea what that's even going to be like.
It's so bumpy. It's like looking in a mirror, a little mirror
Oh my
of
God.
all your worst qualities reflected
Oh
back
God.
at you.
Oh, no, I'm not ready. I have 2 girls too. I feel like it's already like that. The emotions in my household with just the 3 of us, like, and they're only 5 and 3 is insane. So I cannot imagine what's going to happen when they're preteens and teens, and dear God help me.
Sometimes I get frustrated with her. I'm not a perfect parent, and I'm a bit of a spicy mom. So we do,
No one's a perfect parent.
I'm not a Zen parent. And so we do get into fights. It's gotten a little bit better as I've realized what it is about her that's triggering. And it's everything about her that reminds me of my mom.
Of course. Yes. Oh, I have that with my kids too.
And my husband says, when the 2 of you fight, it sounds like you are fighting with yourself on the phone.
And that's so funny because growing up, that's what my dad would say about me and my mom fighting is like, you're exactly the same and that's why you fight. And it's just like, no, I'm not. Oh, no, actually, yes, we are. I hope not, but yeah.
Such a random tangent. We went down that rabbit hole there, but I wanted to ask you what
motherhood.
Yeah, what moving across to like another country with 2, because your kids were young at the time, right? You've been there about a year.
2 and 4.
So how was that?
That was crazy. Yeah. It's absolutely nuts. My husband's from here. He's from Suffolk, and that helps. However, he'd been in the US for 9 years. So it was even a culture shock for him coming back. And he was a bit like, a fish out of water too. We all were. And so it was interesting because, I was so worried about how my kids were going to handle it. And actually, they handled it like champs compared to my husband and I, who were total wrecks. And, we got here and we didn't have, well, we had a rental house. So we were able to secure a house to rent without even seeing it in person beforehand. But because the rental market was so difficult at that time, the house was basically like a piece of shit. I mean, it was in a nice neighborhood, but it was in disrepair. And it was not at all where I saw myself living, in my mid 30s. I'm like, I went through this in college, when this was all I could afford. But like now I have my kids, like I want to live somewhere decent. And like, what is this house like I'm living in? It was kind of awful. But, it was means to an end. And we knew we were buying. So we just needed a place to live long enough until we could find a place to buy. And we did. It only took 6 months. So we were lucky. But I mean, the first couple of months, like talking about being a spicy mom, I try to be a Zen mom, but I am who I am. And I mean, that was the most I've yelled at my kids definitely was the first couple months that we moved, because I think just the stress of moving was so much and not knowing anything. I mean, England, America, you think, oh, they're so similar, of course. But I mean, they're not. They are and they're not. It's super different culturally. And just trying to figure things out, like literally how to buy groceries and how to use the shopping carts, which you have to put a pound coin in to get out. And I didn't have one. And I have my 2 kids and I have my 9-year-old niece or 10-year-old niece. And like, I'm carrying my groceries in baskets. I'm making my niece carry groceries in baskets because I didn't have the coin to get the shopping cart. This is our first ever grocery shop. And I just start crying. I get lost on the way home. I start crying. Like it's just falling apart over the tiniest things, left, right, and center. I had to learn how to drive here immediately because I am this main caretaker of my kids, and everything's driving on the left. We bought a car where the steering wheel's on the right. Yes, the steering wheel's on the right. I still can't, I get it confused. I still walk to my car on the opposite side, like the American side, and I'm like, oh, and I have to walk around. But it was a lot. It was intense. And I knew it was like for the greater good and it felt right that we moved, but it was really, really stressful for the first few months. And then we finally kind of got in a groove. And I mean, I'm still figuring it out, but it's definitely more comfortable now than it was, those first couple months. So I recommend if you're going to move countries, be really, really sure it's what you want, because it will test you. If you have small children or any age children, I'm sure, especially.
I can completely relate to that. I think, I'm a military spouse, so we get the privilege of moving every few years and we don't get to pick.
Yes. Oh, that's so intense. I mean, that's probably very similar to what I went through, because my experience of moving from California to Boston was a huge culture shock because those two places are so different. And so I can only imagine moving all around the US, like it's, pretty much the same as what I went through, or very similar. And that's a lot to go through every few years.
I think any move, moving is stressful. I think when you're doing moves that are far away, there's a certain amount of like logistics that need to be handled. When it's an overseas move, those logistics increase exponentially, right? Because you're looking at things like visas and passports, that kind of stuff.
And selling all of your belongings and buying all new ones or shipping a few things. Yeah, it's a lot, a whole lot.
Right. Budgeting for that. And then there's just that emotional stress. Like you said, are the kids going to be okay? And over the years, my husband and I realized that we have our meltdowns regarding moves at different times. So leading up to the move itself, I'm a mess and I get really upset and angry. And I feel like I'm responsible for like all the logistics plus the emotional labor that goes into the move and making sure everyone feels good and that everything's planned. And then once the movers come and our stuff is on the truck, I get super zen because I'm like, whatever happens is out of my control. My stuff is on the truck. If I never see it again, I've inventoried everything. It's fine.
Right.
Like we're done. Let's just execute.
Yeah, my work here.
Yeah. And that's the exact moment where he looks at and he's like, my stuff is on the truck. I am no longer in control. And that's when he like gets his moment. But our method is always get the kids' rooms set up first. Like as soon as the kids have
Yes, we did
home.
the same. Focus on them first, their rooms, like their essentials, worry about the rest later. And like their routine, even trying to establish their routine, being in a new country was a challenge for me because we had a routine in the US. Like we went to parks, we did this, we did that, on each day. And it's just different, when you move and you don't know your way around and you don't know what you can and can't do. And it was crazy. But yes, we have the same tactic. Get the kids settled first and then you guys later.
Yeah, it's a good tactic. So then what did you do in terms of your pole? So for me, I've been able to drive, like it might be a cross-country multi-day drive, but I've been able to drive to my new location. So I just take my pole down, I put it in the back of the car, and that's like one of the things that I don't let the movers touch. Like I'll move that myself.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Oh my gosh, yes, the pole flying. I flew the pole because, that baby has been with me for many years. Shout out to X-Pole. It's been great and it has never failed me and I wanted to keep it and they're not cheap. So, it was cheaper to ship my pole or to take my pole on the plane than to buy a new one. And so I checked, so I asked around, I put a shout out on Instagram, like who has flown with a pole internationally? What do you do? And shout out to Cassandra because she told me that she goes between the UK and the US and she basically puts the X-Pole in its big X-Pole bag and then bubble wraps the shit out of it like over and over and over, the biggest amount of bubble wrap you can imagine to pad it, and then pay for it as oversized luggage. And it arrived without a dent. It was completely fine. And I mean, I really went excessive with the bubble wrap, but it was really, really good. And I think that cost like 150 for oversized luggage, something like that. So, compared to the cost of a new pole, I mean, it's not, well, it's 100, at least 100 less. But yeah, it just was worth it to me to do that. And so, yeah, I brought my pole and I got it up as quickly as possible. And my husband was sweet and kind enough. I have a very good pole husband. He built me a little pole space in the garage of our first place and put down flooring and got my pole up, within the first couple months so that I could be happy in myself, I need it to be okay.
Priority 1, kids room. Priority 2, pole room.
Pole room. Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah. I let my husband unpack the dishes for, like the stuff for the kitchen.
Yeah.
and now in the current place where we're living, my kitchen is set up for a tall person. So we have stools everywhere so I can reach where he decided things would go in our current kitchen.
Right.
Well,
I mean, you're pretty tall, so that must be for a really tall person.
I'm not that tall. I'm 5'4".
Well, you're not short. Oh, really? Okay. I thought you were slightly taller than that, but you're not, that's not short. You're
No.
average.
Yeah, I'm pretty average. He's about a foot taller than me. So I feel very short compared
Wow,
to
he's
him.
really tall. Yeah, I definitely thought you were taller than 5. I would have said you were like 5'6",
Oh,
but
yeah.
you just have that tall look.
I try to have good posture and take up as much space as possible. I have pole to
Yeah,
thank
well,
for
it's
that.
working.
Yeah.
It's working.
So you mentioned earlier future plans. You're looking to set up a shop, look for an official studio space. I love your
Yep.
home pole studio right now. You have 2 poles, right?
2 poles. Yep. Mm-hmm.
How many
Yeah,
students? Yeah.
That's what I was just gonna say. I teach 4-person classes right now. Spin pole is very popular, so we've been doing 5-person classes, but I'm doing an extra long class so everyone gets their amount of time on the pole. And it's working really, really well. It's just my ceilings are pretty short. That's the kind of biggest issue. It's a beautiful pole space. I'm so happy with it, but in general in the UK, you're not finding a lot of tall ceilings. I mean, that's like very few and far between. Properties here, some of them are 500 years old and they definitely have really short ceilings, but even the new builds, which I'm in a relatively newer build, they just don't really do tall ceilings unless you sort of do a custom house, I think. So my ceilings are quite short and that is the biggest downfall of my space, but I do have a whole separate room for it. I mean, it's amazing how much space I have compared to what I've had in the past. And I am very lucky to have found that.
That's excellent. And if people want to find you, if they're in your area and they want to take lessons from you, or I don't know if you do virtual, do you do virtual lessons as well still?
I'm not doing it right now, maybe someday, but I am focused on the in-person right now.
Okay. And if people want to find you and take lessons from you, how can they find you?
I think Instagram is probably easiest. So at Allie Rachel Pohl,Ally, and then Rachel Pohl, and that just DM me and I'll find a way to get you into class. Or maybe I can do virtual. I am open to virtual, but I just am focused on building the in-person studio here.
Yeah, I get it. It's taken me a whole year here to get my life together to start taking on any kind of private client, whether it's in person or virtual. It's just been like
Are
one
you
thing
doing
after
some in
another.
person now?
No, not
Not quite.
not quite. This place is not ready for me yet. There's
Yes.
interest, but
Yes.
there's a lot of pearl clutching as well.
Yes, right, right, right. I had a very big advantage in that I have nieces through my husband's side who are in their 20s, and that is an amazing market to be able to just tap into. And one of my nieces has been dying to do pole since she was like 14, and she's 21 now. And so not only she's actually teaching for me now. She's been doing it. I've been training her, and then she got certified through expert, and so she's kind of become my little protege, which has been really nice. And yeah, so I have been really lucky that I was able to tap into that, because if I hadn't, I wouldn't know anyone. I wouldn't really be able to. I don't know how I would really advertise myself, because it's all been word of mouth for the most part, and maybe a little bit of social media. But yeah, I can see that. I mean, if I just moved somewhere like you did, that, not knowing anybody, that would be hard to do in person.
The culture here is a little different from California.
Yeah. Yeah. Louisiana, not New Orleans.
Not New Orleans. New Orleans is very cool. There's some very cool studios in New Orleans. They're just about
Yes,
an hour away from where I am. So
exactly.
it's very hard for me to go into an in-person studio right now. And
Right.
and I think any mom can understand this. If you got a studio that's an hour away from you and you're like, okay, I want to go and train, it's 2 hours on either side of the 1, 2, or
It's a
three
three
classes you're
hour,
taking.
it's
Yeah.
3 hours away from your family. And yes, I have that exact problem. And I've had that problem since I had my kids, until recently. The closest pole studio, I guess, in San Diego was 25-minute drive or something like that. Even that little bit, I mean, that is 2 hours of me being away from my kids, the driving time plus the class time. And that's a lot, I mean, that's bedtime and that's all this other stuff. And it's hard to be taking that much time away from your family. So an hour away, yeah, it's hardly doable, or you can't do it often when you do have kids.
Right. And you have a supportive pole husband. I have a supportive pole husband. It's not
Mm-hmm.
necessarily anything on them that they're not supporting us in going to do that, but it's that I personally feel that guilt of being
The
away.
mom guilt. Oh, it's 100% mom guilt. That's what it is. Yeah. No, I mean, we're very lucky, and I'm sure not everyone, of course, not everyone has that kind of supportive partner, but the mom guilt is so real, and I feel it even if they're in bed. I mean, I don't know, it's just, I guess I don't really feel it if they're in bed. I should take that back. But I feel it if I'm missing any part of, leading up to bedtime or whatever. And like right now, with my pole business I have running out of my house, I will only hold classes after dinner. So I'm trying to make sure we have dinner together as a family every night. And that's important to me. But I know as soon as I open a real studio, I'm not going to be able to do that. That's not realistic. I'm going to have to run classes, earlier and during dinner time and stuff. So I'm going to try and do like I'm only away 2 or 3 nights a week kind of thing. But right now I'm missing 3 bedtimes a week, and bedtime with under 5-year-olds is a big thing. And they're not happy about me missing it, and I do have a lot of mom guilt over that. But, it's difficult. You got to find that balance between the things you do for you and your passion. And I'm trying to build a business for my family. And, sometimes you got to miss a few bedtimes or whatever it is.
And to not feel guilty about doing something that, either fulfills you emotionally, keeps you healthy physically and mentally, or
Totally.
maybe
All of
brings
the
you
above.
money. Yeah. And maybe
All
it brings you
all of the
money.
above.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's all those things.
I thought that in training online and teaching online, which is what I do now, I'm just 100%
Hmm.
virtual polar at this point. I thought that it would
Right.
help because it takes off the commute time, and it does. That's good. But then the downside is I hear what happens during bedtime when I'm not
Oh,
there.
yes. Oh, I know. Yes, yes, yes. Because I've been a virtual student for a long time now, right? Like since COVID, especially. And that's been the best thing for moms, I think, or for me as a mom. The COVID gave us virtual classes with like pole stars and all these amazing people and just your own local studio. And that has been huge for me as someone who, yeah, I'm trying not to miss bedtime. So if I can take a virtual class after bedtime and not miss anything, or yeah, but you can hear it all. And it's hard to not be able to be there or to be trying to focus and you hear the screams and it's a lot emotionally, mentally and emotionally. There's a lot going on there.
I will hear my son screaming in the other room, and then he knows which parent is going to be soft with him, and it's me. And I'll hear him go,
Yeah.
"I want mommy," and then I'll see him like on the other side of the glass, like thank God, just off camera, right? Because
Yeah.
he's
As you're teaching, oh my gosh.
Yes. As I'm teaching, I see that he is like, it's always post shower, so he's always naked. And off camera, thank God.
Oh, yeah.
And there he is
It would
standing
be
there,
really cute in the background, but yeah.
just standing there naked, going, "Mom, um, mommy, daddy, he said that I can't have ice cream and chocolate before bed." Like, yeah,
Yeah.
no shit. Like,
You're like, I agree. Anyway, no, but in those moments you can't interact. I mean, you have to just keep teaching, right? I have the same thing. I teach in my house and my kids are still awake. They'll try to run in the room after bath naked. And my husband will have to come chase them down. And and I have to tell my students, like, I'm sorry, sorry for the interruption, everybody. Yeah, it's a lot. The mom whole life. That's what I'm saying. It's very niche, right? Like it's very niche experience. And you're trying to be sexy or something too, right? And then your kid comes in and you're doing the most with your ass in the air and it's like, okay, well. My kids are pretty used to it though. So you should see the way my daughter dances. My older daughter pole dances, and it's just because she just copies me, but she gets really into it.
so dramatic.
So dramatic. Oh, there's hair whips and everything.
I have never shown my son any Dmitry Politov videos, but I swear he is like a little mini Dmitry Politov. He like winds up around that thing. He does all kinds of dynamic stuff. He's not
that's
flipping
so
yet.
cool.
Yeah,
Oh, you got to show him the videos. That's so cool.
I don't want to give him ideas because he has no fear.
Yeah. That's true.
I have 11.5 foot ceilings and he can climb to the top of the pole. And he likes to do that usually right before I start class. Right. And then he cries when I pull him off, Why?
Of course.
And now my daughter's
Classic.
Mad because he's better than her. And I'm like, he's not better than you. He just has less fear
he's
than
a
you.
Boy. Yeah. His body's already built differently.
Exactly.
They do have that upper body advantage in a lot of ways.
They certainly
strength wise. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you cannot appreciate how awful and funny naked child interrupting your pole session is until you become a mother.
Yeah. Definitely. Especially a naked crying child.
Yeah, why do they have to be naked when they cry? And this is why Moms Who Pole started. Like, we need a place to talk about just mom stuff because your average non-mom polar is not going to understand.
It's just not the same experience.
Yeah. It's the nuances and the subtleties of navigating a situation of a emotionally, high-strung child. Yeah.
Yes.
Trying to do that and then come back to pole and being like, okay, where was I? Okay, body wave, lift the leg and straddle.
Yes. It's a journey.
Thank you so much, Allie. I really love that you took the time to talk with me today. I want to finish out with some questions that I ask everybody. Yes. So you do a lot. You're a mom of 2 kids. I know that when you were in the US too, you were balancing pole with a full-time career as well. And now pole is your full-time career in the UK. So when you get overwhelmed, what is the first thing to go? Like, what do you let go of? Like, no, I'm not doing that.
Oh gosh, that is interesting. Um, I have a couple of things I would say, I guess. I put a lot of pressure on myself in terms of momming, right? And how I am as a mom and trying to do things quote unquote the right way, which is a whole bunch of bullshit, but it's an internal struggle. But I think I have a lot of, rules about screen time and how much this and that. And sometimes if everything's too much, those rules start to go out the way, out the door. And it's like, all right, you can have a little more screen time today. We need to just chill out, everybody. Um, but then recently I can be a little bit of a I do too much sort of go 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 kind of person, and sometimes, well, I rarely allow myself to rest. And so lately I'm trying to allow myself, when things get overwhelming, to just do less that day. And a lot of times for me that's like do less physical activity or do less, just sit around more, because I do very little of that. So that's sort of what my goal has been lately, and I've been trying to do with some moderate success lately.
That's awesome. I'm very impressed with both. I think I've been known to have Netflix be a babysitter on more than one occasion.
We all do, or most of us do, yeah. And it's necessary. I mean, it helps a lot.
Yeah.
Yes.
I now I lock the electronics up in like a cabinet.
Mm-hmm.
And I try on occasion to have conversations with especially my oldest about screen time and how, there is that dopamine that comes from that instant kind of gratification that comes with screen time, and how it
Yeah.
creates this like feedback loop, and how it's important to be aware of it. But sometimes she just gets really obstinate, and I'll say like, Vera, I would love to have a conversation with you about, my own problems with screen time and social media, but you're just being obstinate right now. So I'm not going to have this conversation with you. Give me your tablet. Like, I'm locking it up.
But actually, I'm mom, so
Yeah.
hand it over.
Yeah. I'd love to reason with you, but we're beyond that now.
Yes, exactly.
All right. So my next question is, what advice do you have to moms that are thinking about maybe doing pole dancing?
Like a mom who hasn't tried it yet, you mean?
Yeah.
Oh, yes. So I actually have a few students who are moms who are trying out for the first time, which I love and is great. And I feel like I can be a better teacher to them because I am a mom too, and I understand. And um, my advice is don't feel guilty asking for childcare help to go and do something for yourself, because I think that's one of the biggest things we all struggle with, whether that's your partner or a relative or someone else. I think, it's worth it because we get so much out of pole. I think as women and as moms, or as people and as moms, whatever gender. Yeah, I would say that.
That's a good one. That's probably the hardest thing too, because in when you're prioritizing your life as a mom, it's kids first always, and so
Mm-hmm.
we naturally put ourselves as the person that will then provide whatever the kids need.
Yeah.
Because the idea of asking someone else to care for our kids, I don't know if it's society or what it is, but I think we tell ourselves that means that we did not put our kids first.
Right. And for some reason I just feel so bad or guilty. Yeah, asking anyone else to do it. And even there's free childcare here for kids ages 3 and 4. And I still feel guilty sending my kids. And it's like government provided free childcare for everybody, which is amazing. That's one of the amazing things about being here. And I still manage to feel guilty about it. So yeah, it's a thing. It's an issue.
The mom guilt is real, but the joy from Paul
So
shall
real.
overcome it.
Also very real. Yes.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Ali. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk with me. We chatted a lot, and I feel like we still have more to talk about. We'll have to schedule another time to chat about some of the other stuff.
Yes, imposter syndrome next time.
Yeah, next time. Next time, imposter syndrome. Well, thank you so much, Ali. I really appreciate you talking with me. And again, if people are in the local area to you in the UK, you said Ipswich?
Near Ipswich, yeah.
Near Ipswich, to look for you on Instagram at Ali Rachel Pohl.
Yes. Thank you so much. This is a pleasure and really fun.
Thank you, Allie. Take care. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode, my friends. If you enjoyed today's episode, please feel free to give us a big thumbs up, 5-star, like, subscribe, depending on what modality you happen to be listening in on. Check out the show notes below for ways that you can support this podcast, which is currently fueled by copious amounts of afternoon coffee by yours truly and a passion for supporting women in their pole and movement journeys. Until next time, my friends, keep on dancing and remember there's enough spotlight for all of us to shine.